Hello and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music with me, the 80s Mixtaper, and Happy New Year, Happy 2026. I hope your Christmas was wonderfully waistline expanding and that your new year has started with a positive bang and you're no longer counting cheese as a vegetable. I'm not sure about anyone else, but all of 2025 felt like a bit of a chore. This podcast, one of a few things which kept me sane during some pretty maddening moments. So I'm looking forward to a much happier, healthier 2026. So Christmas might be over, but for us today, we'll be rejoining the 80s in November 1981. Just in case your New Year's resolution is to listen to more podcasts and you need a primer, back in 2016 on a whim, I made a bet with myself to see if I could listen to every single charting entry of the UK charts from the 31st of December 1979 to the 31st of December 1989. I found the appropriate chart listing and set to work, speeding up rapidly with some extra time on my hands during the COVID lockdown, and by 2021, and a lot of Flock of Seagulls, Bananarama and Tears for Fears later, I'd done it. All told, a few thousand singles. I then decided I enjoyed it so much that I'd do it again, and then came upon a better idea, this podcast. So this podcast originally started in August 2023 with music, but unfortunately got shuttered in May 2024 when Spotify ended Music and Talk. After a lot of tutting and sighing, it was then reborn in June 2024 when we started again. Each week, we move the calendar slowly forward and pick out the best, most interesting and most bonkers songs the decade has in store for us. Due to copyright laws, we can't now play the songs on the pod, but to remedy this, I have created playlists for both Spotify and Apple Music, which you'll find in the episode description. So what the idea is, while on a walk or something, you listen to a bit of the pod, queue up Spotify or Apple Music, and then listen to the song and flick between the two. Each week, we take either the first 7 or latter 6 songs in the playlist and talk about the making of, videos, fun facts, and the history of their bands and lasting impact. So, we're now at playlist 32, and 1981 is drawing to its close, but not quite. And it has to be said that the first half of this playlist is a monster. Can I introduce you to Fun Boy 3? Shall we have more dollar and modern romance? What about more Kim Wilde and George Benson? Well, let's not stand on ceremony. Let's get back to the music. Okay, let's dive into our first song. A song with a group of characters we've met before, but now we're into their proper 80s transformation. We're talking about a track that captures the uneasy pivot from the high-energy ska of the late 70s into something more sparse and foreboding, mirroring the political dread of the early 80s Britain. It's 1981, amid riots in Brixton and Toxteth, unemployment hitting 3 million under Thatcher, and Cold War tensions escalating with Reagan's arms race. Fresh from the Specials chart-topping Ghost Town, which hit number 1 in July 1981 amid urban unrest, comes The Lunatics Have Taken Over the Asylum, the debut single by Fun Boy 3, released in October 1981 on Chrysalis Records. It peaked at number 20 on the UK singles chart with its minimalist new wave edge, tribal conga rhythms building from the ground up, bass-heavy grooves, and Terry Hall's deadpan vocals delivering a sharp protest against leaders seen as cynics running the world like a madhouse. How prescient is this song still? This is track 1, playlist 32. We're back. That chorus, The Lunatics Have Taken Over the Asylum, still echoes like a grim prophecy, doesn't it? The more things change, the more things stay the same. With lines about stripping dignity, free speech and choice while going nuclear under cowboy leaders. But to grasp this song's story, especially since this is our intro to Fun Boy 3 after covering the special several times, we need to zero in on the band's chaotic end in 1981. By then, the Specials had notched 6 straight UK top 10 singles, fusing ska revival with punk energy and multiracial unity against racism and Thatcherism. Yet the fractures were deep, leading to a sudden split that birthed Fun Boy 3. The breaking point unfolded amid rising tensions. During April 1981 sessions for Ghost Town at Woodbine Studio in Leamington Spa, divisions erupted. Guitarist Roddy Radiation Byers, frustrated with the tricky diminished chord dubbed the Devil's Chord by founder Jerry Dammers, punched holes in the studio walls and refused help. This followed prior incidents like Byers smashing his guitar over Dammers' keyboard on stage. Dammers told the band the dysfunction couldn't continue, but instead of support, vocalists Terry Hall and Neville Staple plus guitarist Linval Golding walked out, effectively dissolving the group. The fallout peaked in July, right after Ghost Town hit #1 amid UK riots. During a Top of the Pops appearance to promote it, relations hit rock bottom. Hall, Staple and Golding confronted Dammers, announcing their exit. Dammers protested, "You're not allowed to leave," to which they replied, "That's the reason we're going, Jerry," and left. The official breakup was announced in October, with the remaining members rebranding as the Special AKA. Why did Hall, Staple and Golding stick together amidst this wreckage? They'd already bonded over shared frustrations, endless arguments about money, taxes and the lack of creative input in the Special's rigid structure. Staples later reflected that after a #1 hit, they sought fewer arguments and validation through new success. They holed up in a shared Notting Hill apartment, watching football, strumming guitars and exchanging ideas, fostering a familial vibe absent in the old band. Crucially, they'd workshopped material together, including the Lunatics, which Golding saw as a natural follow-up to Ghost Town. They insisted the public hear its message on world issues, so rather than shelve it, they launched as Funboy 3 to release it. Golding recalled no nerves. With Funboy 3, they aimed for a deliberate sonic shift from the Special's horn-heavy, frenetic two-tone ska. They stripped it down to a minimalist new wave pop sound, emphasising percussion, congas for tribal, almost Afrobeat rhythms over electronics like the emerging Lindrums. Everyone pitched in on beats, building tracks organically from bass and vocals, mixing in samba, folk and 60s R&B influences for a bittersweet experimental tone. Producer Dave Jordan, a Special's holdover, captured this evolution, while Hall added ironic flair with the band name, a jab at the critics calling them miserable. Their debut album featured collaborations with a little-known girl group called Bananarama on vocals. Of course, we'll be hearing lots from them in the future, diversifying the sound beyond all-male ska. Bananarama, of course, would use this as their launchpad too, and arguably have a longer 80s. The song itself, penned during the Special's More Specials era and rehearsed pre-split. It became Funboy 3's bold opener, a protest against Thatcher's Britain and Reagan's America, with lyrics on nuclear fears, starvation and cynics in power. Golding said, "With Lunatics, Terry wrote about nuclear war and Ronald Reagan, the idea being that the world was being run by lunatics." Hall later mused, "Nothing's changed. When we wrote it, we had Reagan and Thatcher and we thought things couldn't get worse." Raw, prescient and a testament to reinvention. Next up, we are with a band who had already found the 80s party sound and were now doubling down. We're back with Modern Romance, that British pop outfit fresh off their breakthrough with Everybody Salsa. If you remember from episode 28, that track marked their pivot from punk roots into this infectious Latin-flavoured dance sound, climbing to number 12 on the UK singles chart and giving them their first taste of real momentum. It was all about that brass-heavy groove, pulling in trumpet player John Dupre to amp up the salsa vibes, and it set the stage for what came next. The band, led by vocalist Jeff Dean and bassist David James, both ex-members of the Leighton Buzzards, had flopped with their first two singles earlier that year, so Everybody Salsa was basically their make-or-break moment with the record label, and it worked. Now, just a few months later, they doubled down on the formula with a follow-up that kept the party going. I, Moosey. This is track 2, Playlist 32. This one's another slice of upbeat dance floor escapism, clocking in at about 3.5 minutes of pure 80s pop energy that your Auntie Sandra, the cheeky one, the little saucy one, would love. Released in the fall of 1981 as a 7-inch single on WEA Records, it builds on the Latin rhythms that defined their new direction. Think bossa nova, samba and cha-cha influences woven into a catchy repetitive chorus. The lyrics are all about getting out there and moving. You got a bossa nova, got a samba too. You got to dig the cha-cha like your papa do. You got to take a chance. You got to learn to dance. It's got that same percussion-driven backbone with Dean's vocals chanting over brass and bass, urging listeners to embrace the dance craze. No deep metaphors here, and let's be honest, it hardly breaks the mould from everybody's salsa. It's straightforward fun, tying into the early 80s trend of UK acts blending new wave with exotic tropical sounds to stand out in a cluttered landscape. But it also brought a much needed party vibe to a UK that was only just starting to find its groove coming out of the 70s. The single dropped in November 1981, entering the UK charts at number 12 on November the 7th, before climbing steadily. It spent 12 weeks on the chart, peaking at number 10, outdoing Everybody Salsa and solidifying Modern Romance as a chart force. They even performed it on Top of the Pops on November the 5th, 1981. In the broader picture, this was part of a wave of Latin-infused pop hitting the UK, echoing acts like Kid Creole and the Coconut, Haircut 100, and eventually we'll hear that funky trumpet-backed rapping style in early Wham tracks. But Modern Romance carved their niche with these novelty-tinged songs. Recording-wise, it struck close to the Everybody Salsa blueprint, possibly too close. Heavy on that brass with Dupre's trumpet, adding that authentic Latin flair, and a focus on repetitive chant-like hooks to get the crowd going. The title itself, Kiriakou later explained, it was difficult to mention seriously as a song name, and it made him wonder what we had gotten into, but it captured the playful, nonsensical spirit of their dance anthems. The lyrics were written by Dean in order to settle a £10 bet with a Turkish taxi driver called Moosey, who claimed he couldn't write a hit record with his name in the title. Shows what he knows. Impact-wise, it helped propel Modern Romance into more hits like The Best Years of Our Lives in 1982. But 1981 was their launch pad. They toured extensively, appearing on TV and building a fan base for their high-energy shows. I, Moosey might not have crossed over huge internationally. It didn't chart in the US, for example, like their remixed Can You Move, a rap version of Everybody Salsa that hit number 2 on Billboard's dance chart. But in the UK, it was a solid top 10 earworm that kept the Latin pop flame burning. Alright, let's pick things up with Diana Ross in 1981. We last crossed paths with her on It's My Turn, that lush, introspective ballad from late 1980 that peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and showcased her evolving solo artistry after leaving the Supremes. But by 1981, Ross was making bigger moves. After 2 decades at Motown, where she'd racked up 13 top 40 singles as a solo act, including 5 US number ones, she split from the label. She inked a massive $20 million deal with RCA Records, one of the biggest contracts in music history at the time, signalling her push for full creative control. That brings us to our next track, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, the lead single from her RCA debut album of the same name, released on September the 14th, 1981. After the funk-infused sound imbued by Chic's Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers in her 1980 hits like Upside Down, this was Ross's upbeat pop-infused take on a doo-wop classic from 1956, originally by Frankie Limon and the Teenagers. Her version stripped it down to a light, infectious groove with horns, strings, and her signature breathy vocals, clocking in at just over 3 minutes. It climbed the charts, peaking at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 6 on the R&B chart, and number 2 on the Adult Contemporary. Internationally, it hit number 4 in the UK and number 1 in the Netherlands. But enough set up, let's let the song speak for itself. This is track 3. Now, the story behind this track is a tale of revival and independence with some tangled legal drama tied to the original. Ross produced the entire album herself at New York's Power Station studio with engineering by Larry Alexander. It was her first album fully under her production since leaving Motown, and she assembled a team of session players. The album blended covers and originals from a solo redo of her number 1 duet Endless Love with Lionel Richie to funkier cuts like Mirror Mirror, which hit number 8 on the Hot 100. Why Do Fools Fall in Love as an album peaked at number 15 on the Billboard 200 and number 4 on the R&B chart, eventually going platinum in the US with over 1 million copies sold, plus gold in Canada and the UK. The title track's roots go deeper. The original Why Do Fools Fall in Love was the debut single by Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers, released on January the 10th, 1956. Lymon, just 13, took lead vocals. It topped the R&B chart, hit number 6 on the pop chart in the US and number 1 in the UK. But credits were disputed from the start. Earlier versions listed Lymon and producer George Goldner, later shifting to Lymon and Morris Levy after Levy acquired the label. Lymon died in 1968 at 25 from a heroin overdose, sparking decades of disputes. The saga inspired the 1998 film Why Do Fools Fall in Love, starring Halle Berry, Vivica Fox and Layla Rochon. Ultimately, this personal choice for Ross, a nod to the music that first inspired her as a young singer in Detroit, marked a full circle moment, launching her RCA chapter with a top 10 hit while echoing her own origins in song. For track 4, we are with one of the pioneers of disco. But of course, it's 1981, and so they are down on their luck. By 1981, disco was supposed to be dead. 2 years earlier, the backlash had hit hard. Radio stations pivoting away, clubs shifting gears, that infamous disco demolition night in Chicago, turning into a riot on July the 12th, 1979 at Comiskey Park, Chicago. A lot of acts that rode the late 70s wave didn't survive the crash. But Earth, Wind and Fire weren't most acts. They had already proven they could adapt, blending funk, soul, jazz and cosmic spirituality into something timeless. And when they dropped Let's Groove in November of that year, it felt like a defiant middle finger to the haters, and more importantly, a lifeline. Yeah, we're still here and we're still making you dance. Press play now. What a phenomenal piece of music. Let's Groove was the unstoppable lead single from Earth, Wind and Fire's 1981 album Raise. It spent 8 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard R&B chart, hitting number 3 on the Hot 100, and went on to sell over 1 million copies in the US alone, earning gold certification. In the UK, it reached number 3 and it's since gone platinum there and in several other countries. To understand how this song landed like a lifeline in 1981, you have to go back to the beginning with the man who built the band, Maurice White. Born in Memphis in 1941, White moved to Chicago as a teenager and cut his teeth as a session drummer at Chess Records, backing legends like Etta James and Fontella Bass. By the mid-1960s, he was touring with Ramsey Lewis, but he wanted more. He wanted to lead. In 1969, he formed a group called the Salty Peppers, scoring a minor regional hit, then relocated to Los Angeles and rebranded it Earth, Wind and Fire, inspired by his astrology chart lacking the water element. The early lineup was loose, but White kept his younger brother Verdine on bass and started shaping a vision. Horns, percussion, spiritual messages, elaborate stage shows. The first 2 albums on Warner Brothers in 1970 and 71 showed promise, but didn't break big. White overhauled the group again, bringing in singer Philip Bailey, keyboardist Larry Dunn, and others. A live performance caught the ear of Columbia Records boss Clive Davis, and they signed in 1972. Albums like Last Days and Time in 1972 and Head to the Sky in 73 built momentum, the latter going gold with hits like Evil. Then came Open Our Eyes in 1974, their first platinum, featuring Mighty Mighty. The real explosion started in 1975 with That's the Way of the World, the soundtrack to a film they starred in. Shining Star hit number 1 pop and R&B, winning a Grammy. The live double album Gratitude that same year went triple platinum. Spirit in 76, All in All in 77, and the 1978 compilation with new tracks like September kept the streak alive. Multi-platinum sales, more number 1s, 3 Grammys for All in All. They were massive, cosmic costumes, messages of love and unity, the phoenix horns blasting like a spaceship taking off. I Am in 1979 brought Boogie Wonderland with The Emotions and the ballad After the Love Has Gone, both huge. But by 1980's Faces, the momentum had dipped a bit. Still gold, but not the juggernaut. Guitarist Al McKay left after that. Disco's collapse didn't help. Even though EWF had always been more than just disco, the genre shift hurt. Enter Raise, released in November 1981. Maurice White co-wrote Let's Groove with Wayne Vaughan and produced it himself. He updated the sound for the new decade. Synthesizers, a gritty vocoder hook right up front, live guitars and those signature horns. White told NME around the release that it was about knowing the feelings and fundamentals involved in producing a hit. And people did. Critics noticed the shift. Ken Tucker in Rolling Stone called the horns screaming like a car running a red light. Record World praised the deep, brawny bass line. Jordan Bartel later dubbed it quite possibly the funkiest thing to come out of the early 1980s. The video, full of analogue computer animations from the Scanimate system, became the first ever played on BET's Video Soul. Let's Groove didn't just save the album, it revived the band at a moment where many thought their peak was behind them. It proved Maurice White's genius for evolution. Take the core groove, add some future-facing polish, and remind everyone why the dance floor still mattered. In a year when pop was figuring out what came after disco, Earth, Wind & Fire said, simply, this. Talking of comebacks, the last time we were with Dollar, it was to introduce them in episode 28 and Handheld in Black and White, produced by Trevor Horn, that climbed to number 19 on the UK singles chart and marked their return after a couple of quieter years. It was a fresh start for the duo, David Van Day and Teresa Bazar, shifting from their late 70s bubblegum pop roots towards something more polished and electronic. But they weren't done yet. Just a few months later, in November 1981, they dropped their follow-up, Mirror Mirror Mon Amour. This one's got that same glossy Horn production. It's a song co-written by Horn himself, alongside Bruce Woolley. Let's let the music do the talking. This is track 5, playlist 32. Mirror Mirror was released as a 7-inch single on WEA Records. There was also a 12-inch version featuring an extended mix, stretching the runtime for the dance floors. It quickly became their biggest hit since 1979, peaking at number 4 on the UK singles chart in December 1981, where it spent 17 weeks on the chart. The single sold well enough to push Dollar back into the spotlight, appearing on shows like Top of the Pops multiple times that winter. Dollar had formed in 1978 after Van Day and Bizarre had left the group Guys and Dolls, where they'd been members after auditioning in their late teens. Their early success came with originals like Love's Got a Hold on Me, but by 1980 the hits had dried up and they were dropped by their label. That's when Bizarre reached out to Trevor Horn, a producer she'd met through Guys and Dolls connections. Horn, fresh off his time with the Buggles and looking to pivot into production, agreed to work with them, seeing potential in revamping their sound. Horn didn't just produce Mirror Mirror, he co-wrote it with Woolley, who had credits on Buggles tracks like Clean Clean. This track was the second in a quartet of Horn-produced singles for Dollar in 1981 and 82. The song's success helped propel their third album, The Dollar Album, released in October 1982, which peaked at number 18 on the UK Albums chart and went silver. But Horn's involvement ended after these 4 singles. He got too busy after the Dollar tracks caught the ear of other acts, leading him to produce ABC's seminal album, The Lexicon of Love. Dollar handled the rest of the album themselves, with Bizarre later saying she viewed the Dollar album as a creative pinnacle. Promotion included a memorable video for Mirror Mirror, with a Geppetto-style puppet maker crafting a Bizarre and Van Day lookalike who suddenly spring to life, flicking between happy and sad versions of themselves and then being sold in the window of a snowy toy store before breaking out and turning into themselves. Bizarre had shared fond memories of it on social media. Dollar rode this wave into more hits, the saccharine sweet Give Me Back My Heart, which also hit number 4, and Videotech, a far better song in my opinion, both in 1982. But tensions grew. However, Mirror Mirror remains a high point, a snapshot of early 80s pop at its most reflective. Next up, we're catching up with an artist we last saw all the way back in episode 11.5 in 1980, George Benson. Last time, we grew through George Benson's 1980 smash hit, Give Me the Night, that Quincy Jones-produced album that blended jazz, R&B and disco into a chart-topping phenomenon, earning Benson a Grammy for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance. It marked the peak of his crossover success, with the title track hitting number 4 on the Hot 100 and dominating the R&B chart. But what came next for the Pittsburgh-born guitarist and singer who'd been grinding since his teens? Well, Benson had recorded a new album, but Warner Brothers wanted to capitalise on his momentum with a greatest hits collection. Released in 1981, the George Benson collection was a 2 LP set, later reissued as one compact disc, featuring classics like Breezin' and On Broadway. But it needed fresh material to entice buyers. Enter 2 new tracks, including the lead single Turn Your Love Around, dropped in October 1981. This was not filler. It became Benson's last top 5 pop hit of the era, peaking at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks, starting on January the 31st, 1982, after entering the chart on October the 24th, 1981, and logging 22 weeks total. It topped the R&B singles chart, reached number 10 in Canada for 2 weeks, hit number 29 in the UK, and ranked as the 27th biggest hit of 1980 overall. This is our track 6 today. So, how did this sleek synth-driven pop R&B gem come together so quickly? It starts with producer and co-writer Jay Graydon, who'd worked with Benson before. Warner needed a new song fast for the compilation, and Benson was due in town on a Tuesday, leaving Graydon just 4 days to deliver. As Graydon told Songfacts, I was getting nothing, and then bang, I just came up with this melody for the chorus when I was in the bathroom. He elaborated to Rhino, well, I got off the can as fast as I could and got to a cassette machine so I wouldn't forget it. That bathroom epiphany birthed the catchy melody. Simple enough, Graydon said that you could play it with your nose on a piano, ensuring its memorability. He recruited Toto Steve Lukather for the verse. Graydon recalled, Luke, I got to come up with the song in 2 days. I got a great chorus here, come up with a verse. The next day, they brought in Bill Champlin of Chicago for the lyrics and bridge. Champlin later explained the line, Girl, you've been charging by the hour for your love, wasn't about a prostitute. He said, I was thinking more, you've been making me pay emotionally or intellectually, but some people took it to be you've been charging by the hour as in being a hooker. In my mind it wasn't, it just seemed like a good idea. They demoed it that night, Benson approved it the next day, the label greenlit it, and recording wrapped swiftly. Graydon produced, handling guitar and synthesizer since he felt Benson's jazz style didn't suit the track. Benson stuck to vocals. The session featured heavyweights from another band we haven't met yet, Toto. Jeff Porcaro on drum programming with one of the first pop uses of the Linn LM1 drum machine. They did try live drums but reverted to the Linn drum. And David Paich on synthesizer bass. Jay Winding played Fender Rhodes and piano, Gary Herbig added flute and sax, Bill Reichenbach trombone, Jerry Hay trumpet and arranging horns, Chuck Findlay trumpet, and background vocals from Champlin, Carmen Twilley and Vanetta Fields. Graydon pushed Benson vocally, telling him, just let me work you, man, you hired me as a producer, let me get you sounding as good as you can sound. The result, a Grammy for Best R&B Song in 1983 for the writers. The track's legacy endured. It was sampled in Lil' Kim's album version of Not Tonight, and the 1994 Japanese hit Dayone, I think is how you say it, by East End X Zuri. For Benson, it bridged his 70s jazz funk era into the 80s, though his next album, In Your Eyes in 1983, shifted towards more pop. But Turn Your Love Around stands as a tale about quick creativity under pressure, turning a compilation necessity into a solid hit. We end today with the woman of the hour, and the 4th time we featured her in 1981 alone. It's the chart breakout year for Kim Wilde, the 20-year-old daughter of 50s rock and roller Marty Wilde and former Vernon's girl Joyce Baker. We last left her with Water on Glass, the third single off her self-titled debut album, which dropped in the UK that summer and peaked at number 11 on the charts. It was a solid follow-up to her smash hits Kids in America and the top 5 hit Checkered Love, keeping that new wave vibe alive with that punchy synth-tinged energy produced by her brother Ricky. But as autumn rolled in, Wilde and her family team, Marty on lyrics, Ricky on production, decided to shift gears. They released Cambodia on November the 2nd, 1981, as a standalone single that would preview her second album, Select, which wouldn't hit the shelves until May 1982. This marked a turn towards something moodier, more atmospheric, ditching some of the debut's rock edge for heavy synths and an East Asian sounding percussion that evoked mystery and melancholy. This is track 7, Playlist 32, our final track today. The song clocks in at 3 minutes and 56 for the single version, stretching to 7 minutes and 13 on the album, with an instrumental reprise tacked on. Notably, it skipped North America entirely. No US push, which might explain why it's less remembered stateside compared to Kids in America. But in Europe, it took off. Let's unpack the story behind this one. Written by Marty and Ricky Wilde, it's a tragic tale spun from a real-world shadow. The aftermath of the Vietnam War era, specifically nodding to US involvement in Cambodia. The lyrics follow a woman in Thailand whose husband, an Air Force pilot, flies off to Cambodia one day and never returns. Lines like, "She never knew the reason why," paint this eerie, unresolved loss. According to accounts, the original draft was in the first person from the wife's perspective, but it got reworked into third person narration for the final cut. Kim has described it as a song mystery, not a direct political statement on the Cambodian conflict, but more of a narrative about personal heartbreak amid global turmoil. It's a tragic love song. It's about someone who loses her lover in sad circumstances, she said. Critics like Chris Mugan and The Independent called it reminiscent of classic film noir, while Matt James at Popmasters saw it as an early pop attempt to grapple with serious issues, predating tracks like The Human League's The Lebanon or Sting's Russians. Ricky Wilde's production leaned hard into synths, creating a chilling dirge-like atmosphere that AllMusic's Stuart Mason dubbed a cult favourite for its drama, though he noticed it lacked the bubblegum pop of her earlier work. John Bush, also from AllMusic, called it a fan favourite, but odd and chilling. Reception was mixed. Colin Larkin's Encyclopedia of Popular Music praised its adventurous sound, but Mike DeGarnier in AllMusic Guide to Rock found it lacking spirit. Still, it resonated. Vogue later hailed it an underrated classic, and The Independent lumped it with Kids in America as an 80s staple. Chart-wise, Cambodia was a beast overseas. It hit number 1 in France, certified gold for 1 million units, Sweden and Switzerland. Number 2 in West Germany, Belgium and South Africa. Number 3 in Norway, number 4 in Australia, number 10 in the Netherlands, Finland. In the UK, it settled at number 12, but that didn't stop it from cementing Wilde's status as a continental star. The single's release came amid Wilde's rising fame. She'd just wrapped her debut album cycle and was eyeing live shows, though her first gigs wouldn't happen until 1982. Fast forward, and Cambodia has endured. It popped up on the 2021 TV series Yellow Jackets episode The Dollhouse, proving its atmospheric pull. For Wilde, it was a bold pivot that showed she wasn't a one-album wonder, setting up select success and her ongoing career. Marty Wilde himself penned it as a survivor of early British rock, drawing from broader influences like ABBA's melodic hooks, which shaped the family's songwriting. It's a snapshot of pop evolving, serious themes wrapped in synth gloss, right at the dawn of the 80s explosion. So what a way to kick off 2026. And as we reach the halfway point of Playlist 32, do come back next week as we get into some melancholy with the Pretenders and Soft Cell. Queen and David Bowie lock horns for an absolute classic. Godley and Cream take us on a cynical journey of someone's nuptials. And we introduce Shack Attack and a certain dead ringer for love, Meatloaf, into the mix. So that'll give you something to listen to as you wheeze and strain down the gym, trying to fulfill that New Year's resolution about losing weight. And trust me, I'm right there with you. Anyway, Happy New Year. I hope your 2026 is fun-packed and healthy. And until next time, take care.